Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Will, and today I'm going to be doing one of my favorite things, which is determining who the asshole is in various different situations. The theme for this edition of Am I the Asshole is children. Let's get started. There's a cattail right in frame. That is beautiful. Thank you. So for a little bit of context, I personally am not a huge fan of children, despite the fact that people keep telling me I will change my mind about wanting to have one. I have lived on this earth for 22 years and I'm still pretty insistent on the idea that I do not want children. I feel like I would get annoyed too frequently. It's a huge financial responsibility, and I just don't have a type of lifestyle where I want to take care of children. I barely want to take care of myself. I'm going to be reading some Reddit scenarios that involve parents and children and give my unprofessional opinion on whether or not I think that the poster is an asshole. This first one says, am I the asshole for scolding a stranger's child for touching my stuff? It says, I, 23 female, was out for dinner with my family this evening. We went to a family-friendly restaurant and it was quite early, so there was lots of families with children. This one kid who was about 9 to 10 was yelling, running up and down the aisle between the tables and doing cartwheels, literally. It was annoying, but we just ignored him and carried on with our meal. His mother was sat at their table talking to the adult she was with and completely ignoring her son, apart from occasionally telling him to come and finish his food. We were sat in a booth and I had my stuff on the bench next to me, including a hat. One of the many times he ran past our table, he stood, picked up my hat, and put it on. He then turned to run off when I said sharply, give that back right now. He took it off, gave it back, and looked embarrassed. I carried on by saying it is extremely rude to take other people's things without asking, don't do that again. He glanced over to his mother several times as I spoke to him, and when she noticed, she got up and came over to our table. His mom heard part of what I was saying, and she came up to us and angrily told me to leave her son alone. I explained that he'd taken my things and I was telling him not to, and she told me I shouldn't stick my nose in as he's just a kid. I should have just let him play with the hat or asked for it back nicely without scolding him. Am I the asshole for telling off this child for touching my stuff? I'm immediately going to go with no. It is so infuriating to have anybody touch your stuff, let alone a child, and children naturally carry a lot of germs, so you don't know what germs he just projected onto that hat. And justifying it by saying he's just a kid is absolutely insane to me. If anything, it's more important to teach him the right thing because he's a child, because he's going to grow up learning those things, not the asshole. So this next one is more so from the perspective of a parent, but this says, am I the asshole for snapping at a barista after she woke up my sleeping baby twice? The coffee shop near my house just reopened, so I went in for coffee on my afternoon walk with my 9-month-old daughter yesterday. It wasn't busy, but because there were only 3 baristas, only 2 serving customers working, the service was slow. That's fine, I wasn't in a rush. But the second I walked in, I was struck by how loud their coffee grinder was. It wasn't just shut off in a few seconds though, but kept going and going, since the 3rd barista was grinding a huge bag of coffee all at once. Within the first minute, my daughter wakes up and keeps screaming, no matter how much I try to comfort her. After 5 minutes, I asked the barista if she could stop using the coffee grinder as it's disturbing my baby, and she agrees and turns off the machine. While I'm waiting for my drink, I managed to get my daughter to start dozing again until the barista turns on the grinder again, making my daughter cry all over again. At this point, I snap at the barista for turning it on while I'm still there, as she can clearly see that she's caused my daughter to cry again. The barista says she was doing something else with the grinder that was more urgent, but could she really not have waited until I left? Anyways, the other baristas were extremely cold to me and didn't even say anything when they gave me my drink. I emailed the manager when I got home explaining the situation, and today the manager replied and apologized for what happened. In return, I got a free gift card. I was telling my husband this thinking he would be excited about the gift card, but he doesn't think I should have emailed the manager at all, and then I overreacted. But the manager agrees that I was wronged here. Am I the asshole? Let me just tell you, from a food service perspective, the manager did not agree with you. He was just smoothing things over, as managers do. I was very briefly a shift manager at McDonald's, and 90% of the time we would be given asshole customers, and the only way to soothe them at all was to give them something free in return so that they would just leave us alone. It doesn't mean we agree with you, it just means that we want you to shut the fuck up. Of course, there are some instances where we genuinely made a mistake and we feel bad, and so we want to make things right with you, but 90% of the time we just want you to leave us alone. This circumstance is crazy to me because I get it, you had a baby, but you can't expect the whole world to be on hold just because you have a baby, and you can't expect people doing their jobs to not do their jobs because you have a baby. If it was that big of an issue, you could have taken your baby outside, continued the walk, got out of the loud environment, but you continued to stay. The lady in question, the barista in question, works at a coffee shop. Obviously they have to grind coffee. Imagine if like she was making that for a customer order and then just had to tell the customer, sorry, we can't get any more coffee for you because that lady's baby is taking a little snooze.
Do not wake my baby!
That's not fair to just expect the whole world to be on a hiatus because your baby is sleeping. You're 100% the asshole in that situation. That reminds me of a time when I was like 9 or 10. It wasn't too long after my cousin had been born and we were both staying over at my grandma's house for the evening. And I'd gotten up in the evening literally to just use the bathroom because I had to pee really bad. And my grandma started complaining to me. She's like, oh, I just got him to go to sleep. Like, you're gonna wake him up if you keep getting up. And she was just like complaining to me that I was going to wake up the baby by getting up to pee. And in the morning, I remember I gave her a lecture about it. I was like, listen, Grandma, I know that it's not safe to hold in your pee. You gotta let it out. I just, you know, didn't want kidney damage because my cousin was sleeping. Obviously, if you ask someone to please be quiet in the privacy of your own home or in like a naturally quiet environment, that's one thing. But at a coffee shop, you gotta make coffee in a coffee shop. Be fucking for real. Be so fucking for real. You're the asshole. Am I the asshole for being pissed after a special need kid ruined my 14th birthday? That does not sound reassuring. Let's take a little read. A few days before my birthday, my mom asked me to invite some special needs kid named John. Don't like that that's how we're referring to John, but let's continue. She said that he had no friends and she felt bad. I said no because he was a brat during school and had temper tantrums when the teacher would say anything negative to him. My mom invited him anyways without even asking. Anyways, the day of the birthday came and we went bowling. The kid arrived late and then got mad because the music was too loud. Anyways, I actually had a decent time for the first 5 minutes of the game. When my turn came, he went up to me and stole the ball. I told him to go away and his mom told me to stop being a brat and just give him my turn. I said hell no and my mom yelled at me. Then he stole the next kid's turn, then the next. I was super pissed. So yeah, bowling was ruined and it seems like nobody gives a fuck because he's special needs. After that, we went and got cake at our grandparents' house. By then, I didn't give a shit anymore because my birthday was already ruined. Then we sung happy birthday and he loudly yelled happy birthday to me and his mom had to take him for a walk. By the time he came back, we had already gotten out slices of cake, so you know, he does the logical thing. Jump onto the table and scream and splash cake at everyone. I was so pissed at that point that I just ran out. My mom came out to me and told me to stop being a brat and that John is special needs. I told her, I don't care. He made my birthday all about him. I don't care that he's special needs. I want him gone. I could see why he had no friends. My mom told me that I was being rude and said that if I said any more, I was grounded. I told her I don't care. After the John kid went home, my grandparents went off on my mom. They were super pissed that their table was broken and that some random kid ruined my birthday. My mom told them that life isn't fair and I told her that if life isn't fair, then I guess that's why John has no friends. My aunt called me a rude jerk for saying that. My grandparents kicked my aunt out for saying that. My mom took me home and told me I was grounded for 2 weeks for being rude to a sped kid. Am I the asshole? This is an interesting situation to me. I don't think it's necessarily wrong for this poster to not want that kid at the party because he was obviously making it an unpleasurable time for everybody. And I think as someone who was a part of like the special education program at school, I think people still need to be held accountable for some of their actions, and if they genuinely cannot behave or act appropriately in certain circumstances, they shouldn't be put in certain situations and circumstances. Like, it sounded like John didn't feel comfortable in the environment he was in the first place, which caused him to act up, and so I think he should have been removed from the environment for everyone's benefit, including his own. I don't think it is fair to force somebody to be friends with somebody just because they're a special ed kid though, and I don't think it's right for a parent to just invite somebody to their kid's birthday party without their consent, because obviously they have reasons for not wanting him there, and whether they have a disability or not, it's not going to be comfortable for someone else to have the focus at someone's birthday. I hate when parents have like a younger sibling of a kid and then the younger kid gets to blow out the candles and celebrate their birthday. Like, no, your birthday should be about you. While inclusivity is a good thing, I don't think forcing somebody to invite somebody is the best way to go about it. I think the asshole is the mom for trying too hard to get this kid to go to the party, and literally the homeowner was upset because their table was broken. I'm sorry to say it, but I would not be happy if my property was just broken by a random kid, and I would not want them in my environment again. And while we need to cater to people in some aspects, I definitely don't think that it should have just been shrugged off and like, oh well, he's special ed, so he can do whatever he wants. I don't think that's a fair thing to teach anybody involved. When I was in school and I was like part of the special ed, mostly due to autism and stuff, there was this other person that I always had problems with, and I would like try and report things that she'd done, and people just brushed it aside because, oh, she's special ed. And it was so irritating to me because just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you can't do things that are wrong. It doesn't mean that you don't need to be held accountable for your actions. It doesn't automatically mean that people need to like you. That's just the reality of life. While some of the things said were harsh, I have to admit the fact that I'd be pretty pissed if my birthday was ruined in that way too. And I don't think this person is necessarily the asshole for being upset about the outcome of their birthday. Am I the asshole for my kid crying and annoying a dog owner? Let's get started. I went out to eat on a patio with my 10-month-old and wife. We got seated at a table next to a guy who brought his dog. It's medium-sized, not sure what breed. It's a few minutes, all is well. We get our drinks and order our food. Another guy with a dog shows up. The dog barks and growls at him. The guy gets his dog to be quiet. The other dog doesn't react at all. We aren't a dog family. We chose this spot because the weather was great and the food and drinks are good. The presence of the dog doesn't bother me, but I'm not going to willingly interact with them. My kid has minimal experience around dogs for his safety. The barking and growling, however, caused my 10-month-old to start crying. It freaked him out. My wife is consoling him. It's maybe 30 seconds and the other guy told us maybe we should take him away. I see no reason to do that and I tell him he'll be fine in a few minutes. My kid, however, isn't calming down as quick as we hoped. The guy pipes up again and says my kid crying is ruining his meal. I flip out, tell him to shut the fuck up and blame his dog for why my kid is crying. He tells me if I can't handle my kid, I shouldn't be going out to eat. I tell him this whole thing is entirely his fault for bringing his shitty dog out. He calls me an asshole and calls the waitress over to complain. My wife and I decide to leave cash and get out of there. Was I in the wrong? So I think that both people in this situation were a little bit annoying and unnecessary to each other. I think that this feud could have been solved by one person moving, especially since the poster claimed that they didn't really like dogs. They could have solved it by maybe not going in a place with as many dogs. But I think the blame is mostly on the person with his dog, because it's natural for a kid to react to a strange noise, and if they're not used to dogs, obviously they're going to be a little freaked out by the sight of a dog. It's not like, I don't think it's fair for the person to say, oh, your kid crying ruined my meal, because kids cry. It's just a fact of life. And I'm not going to be mad at a parent for trying to console their crying child. I do get a little irritated when the child is older than a literal baby and the parent is doing nothing to stop their actions, but it's a literal baby. It was, you know, the situation was somewhat new, so obviously the child started crying. It's not fair of the dog owner to just say, oh, your kid is triggering my dog, because it seemed like the dog itself was like growling, barking, making people uncomfortable as well, which set off the kid crying. And honestly, this sounds as entitled. Honestly, this kind of sounds as entitled as the person with the barista. Like, you can't just expect a perfect environment for your dog. Don't bring your dog to a restaurant where people go and eat if your dog is going to be triggered by people around them. And let me be clear, I'm not blaming the precious dog. I'm blaming the dog's owner for bringing their dog into a situation where obviously the dog wasn't too comfortable or familiar either. And for the last one, this one says, am I the asshole for telling a mom she was a negligent parent after her 4-year-old grabbed my freshly dried blanket with her filthy hands? My boyfriend is calling me a Karen. This isn't a shitpost. I'm so really in TBH. Even if I am the asshole, I'm so incensed I don't think I can regret what happened. We have a shared laundry room in my apartment, and I was dealing with my basket of clean laundry and I was folding as I was going. I had 2 baskets, one full of jumbled bedsheets and blanket, and one for my folded laundry ready to take up. There's a lady there with her kid. She was sitting, completely ignoring the kid on her phone. The kid was running around and pulling things, pushing buttons, twisting settings on random machines. The works. She didn't once stop to tell her daughter to behave. At one point, she crawled on her belly halfway under some benches, and when she came back out, she was covered in dust and filth. I carried on with my folding, giving the girl death glares because she kept looking over at my basket and asking her mom if she could touch the blankie because it's pink. Her mom kept grunting without looking up. I turned around to sweep in the dryer to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything, and lo and behold, when I turned around, the kid had handfuls of my blanket in her grimy ass hands. I yelled. I didn't mean to. I just loudly said, "What are you doing?" And the mom immediately started to cuss me out. I was pretty pissed because I only had one blanket to sleep with, and so I snapped back that she was a bad parent and negligent. The kid literally wasn't bothered. She was back to crawling, and the mom looked like she was gonna throw hands, so I left. I told my boyfriend this on the phone fuming, and he said I acted like an asshole and a Karen. I think the boyfriend needs to chill out a little bit because I don't think that this person was necessarily the asshole. I think they could have prevented this a little bit, but once again, it presents the issue of an unsupervised kid just doing whatever the fuck they want in a public place. But the parent is responsible for what that kid does and how the kid behaves, and the kid literally asked, "Can I touch the blanket?" and the parent didn't respond, so the kid went and touched the blanket. And the kid was crawling on the floor getting dirty. It can't be very sanitary for the kid either, so I do think there was a little bit of negligence going on, and the parent shouldn't have been letting their kid just run amok like that. That being said, when this person did hear the kid like running around and expressing interest in their blanket, I personally would have like grabbed my stuff right then and like kept it from the kid, or at least like pulled it closer to me, kept a closer look on it to make sure the kid didn't snatch it, because it's obvious that the parent wasn't going to do the parenting themselves. Maybe the yelling was a little bit extreme, but the child obviously wasn't even bothered by it and just continued doing whatever the fuck they did. And ultimately, it's the parents' fault for not keeping an eye on their child and just letting their child do as they wanted, which affected the people around them. That being said, I have so much respect to the parents who actually do, you know, take care of their kids, and yeah, that's it. But that is going to be all for this video, and I'll see you in my next.